We will fulfill the notion that this is a nation that can become more perfect. And what I am concerned about
fixing the structures and the systemic racism that is embedded in it.
The fact of the matter is that we don't have to agree. We don't have to agree on the fact that...
In today's video, we're diving into one of the most talked about moments in recent political TV. A heated clash on The View between Senator Tim Scott and co-host Sunny Hostin. What started as a discussion on systemic racism quickly turned into a tense debate over personal success, racial inequality, and media bias. With facts at the ready, Tim Scott dismantled hostile questions and refused to let interruptions derail his message, making for one of the most compelling segments the show has seen in years. Let's break down this fiery exchange and explore why Tim Scott's performance is being hailed as a masterclass in resilience and debate.
Question to you is, I'm the exception, right? You're the exception. Maybe even Miss Whoopi Goldberg is the exception. But we are not the rule. And so when it comes to racial inequality, it persists in 5 core aspects of life in the U.S. Economics, education, healthcare, criminal justice, and housing. At nearly every turn, these achievements were fought, threatened, and erased, most often by white violence. You have indicated that you don't believe in systemic racism.
Live on The View, Sunny Hostin didn't hold back in her critique of Senator Tim Scott's views on systemic racism, accusing him of ignoring the persistent inequalities that define the American experience for many minorities. Hostin highlighted disparities in economics, education, healthcare, criminal justice, and housing, framing these as evidence of deeply entrenched systemic barriers. She argued that Scott's personal success, while admirable, represents an anomaly rather than the norm, and challenged his narrative that such achievements are broadly accessible. By doing so, Sunny Hostin positioned herself as a defender of structural reform, emphasizing that progress cannot be measured solely by individual exceptions. In response, Tim Scott had some very strong answers. Take a look.
I'll tell you that if my life is the exception, I can't imagine.
But it is.
But it's not actually. It's
been 114 years.
Yeah. So the fact of the matter is, we've had an African American president, African American vice president. We've had 2 African Americans to be secretaries of the state. There was about 15% employment in the African American community for the first time in the history of the country. It's under 5%.
40% homelessness.
And 50%
of African Americans.
50% of the folks in our community.
Yet 13% of the population.
One of the things I think about, and one of the reasons why I'm on the show, is because of the comments that were made, frankly, on the show, that the only way for a young African American kid to be successful in this country is to be the exception and not the rule. That is a dangerous, offensive, disgusting message to send to our young people today, that the only way to succeed is by being the exception. It's because I believe that education is the closest thing to magic in America. So I'm about making sure that our kids have as many opportunities to succeed as possible. It's one of the reasons why.
Senator Tim Scott pushed back forcefully against the narrative that African American success must be the exception rather than the rule, labeling it a dangerous, insulting, and disgusting message to send to young people. He argued that framing success as an outlier perpetuates a culture of low expectations, which harms progress rather than promotes it. Scott pointed to tangible improvements, such as historically low unemployment rates within the African American community, as evidence that systemic oppression is not the defining reality for all. Drawing from his own journey, Tim Scott highlighted the transformative power of education, describing it as the magic that unlocks opportunity in America. By advocating for expanded educational access and resources for children, Scott underscored his belief that empowerment, not victimhood, should drive the conversation on racial inequality. However, the tone of the exchange was anything but productive, as Scott faced frequent interruptions and abrupt commercial breaks that appeared designed to derail his arguments. Co-host Whoopi Goldberg cut him off multiple times, while moments of audience hostility, including booing, created an environment more combative than conversational. See.
Because I have to go to break. Oh, they're begging.
We have more time, Joe.
They're begging. You're
coming.
I'm just getting started.
I know.
I believe all people. We will fulfill the notion that this is a nation that can become more perfect. And what I am concerned about
fixing the structures and the systemic racism that is embedded in it.
The fact of the matter is that we don't have to agree. We don't have to agree on the fact that the definition.
Go up and tell him. Go tell him.
Tell him from the mountain.
We have to go to commercial. We'll come down. You're going to stick around. You'll stick around.
I think you'll have commercial breaks.
These tactics, paired with the editorial control of cutting to commercial during pivotal moments, were seen by many as deliberate attempts to undermine Tim Scott's message. Despite this, Scott maintained his composure, refusing to be rattled, and effectively delivered his points, leaving the audience with a powerful example of grace under fire.
The truth of the matter is that when you look at progress in the Senate, especially from the Republican side, African-American chiefs of staff on the Republican side, the only African-American female chief of staff was mine. The current only Hispanic chief of staff, who happens to be female, is mine. When you look at the fact that when I helped to rewrite the tax code in 2017, I focused on my growing up experience, which was a single mother. I cut her taxes. Single mothers like mine, average income around $40,000 by 73%.
Only one black senator out of 50.
We're talking about progress.
Right.
There's only two on the other side. There's only two on the other side.
Sonny Hostin's line of questioning during the segment was criticized as a textbook example of bad faith, with a co-host presenting her opinions as incontrovertible facts rather than genuinely engaging with Senator Tim Scott's viewpoints. This combative approach seemed less about fostering dialogue and more about advancing a partisan narrative, amplified by an audience allegedly primed to oppose Scott, whose boos added to the tense atmosphere. T1 point. Co-host Whoopi Goldberg was even seen consoling Sonny Hostin, a moment that underscored the emotional charge of the exchange and further highlighted the lack of balanced discourse. Critics have drawn parallels to previous episodes of The View, where conservative or non-liberal guests like Bill O'Reilly and Donald Trump Jr. were met with similarly hostile environments, reinforcing the show's reputation as an echo chamber for left-leaning perspectives.
Over what I thought was the right issue as it relates to our young kids and what they're being indoctrinated with. I thought he started off on the right foot on that issue.
No, not here. I'm sorry, sir. Do not boo. This is The View.
The View has long been accused of serving as a liberal echo chamber, catering to its loyal audience of middle-aged and suburban women with a steady diet of progressive perspectives. Critics argue that the show's hosts perpetuate a partisan bias, often dismissing or undermining conservative viewpoints rather than engaging with them substantively. This bias was on full display during Tim Scott's appearance, as the panel seemed unprepared for a minority conservative who could articulate his beliefs with facts and poise. Scott, who has been unfairly caricatured by some as a mindless idiot, due to his alignment with Donald Trump, shattered those expectations with a polished and well-prepared performance. His ability to rebut the host's assumptions left them scrambling, and elevated his standing as a serious political figure. This moment holds broader implications for the state of political discourse in mainstream media, showcasing the challenges of bridging the ideological divide. It underscores how platforms like The View often reflect the growing polarization, with little room for meaningful dialogue across the aisle. For Tim Scott, however, this encounter was more than a debate. It was a proving ground that showcased his resilience and intellectual rigor. His calm demeanor under fire, and his ability to hold his own against a hostile panel, have enhanced his appeal among conservative voters, positioning him as a viable contender for higher office, including a potential vice presidential role. His performance not only resonated with his base but also challenged the perception of conservative voices in traditionally liberal spaces. Tim Scott's appearance on The View was a striking reflection of the broader social and political tensions shaping contemporary America, touching on issues of race, partisanship, and media bias in a setting often criticized for its one-sided discourse. By holding his ground in a challenging environment, Scott underscored the importance of open dialogue and demonstrated the power of pushing back against entrenched narratives with facts and poise. What do you think of this issue? Let us know in the comments. Thank you.